welcome Lex the Lexicon Artist to the stage of the Phoenix Theater. Lex is an Oakland-based rapper who created this project to channel her self-repression, neurotic ambition, and delusions of grandeur into something that could be shared on the stage instead. Tonight we'll go deep into her raging ego and get to know Lex better, and later she'll play a set of music. Please welcome to the program, Lex the Lexicon Artist.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jim and Tom. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Now, I just so everybody knows, and they will after they listen to this episode, but that was not my editorializing saying you have a raging ego. This is the name of an album, which we will get to soon. We're going to start off with just a hardball, because I feel like you can handle a hardball.
I can handle a hardball.
You can handle a hardball.
I can handle the hardest of balls.
Well, here's the hardest of balls that I am going to toss your way. You describe yourself as ugly and real, or at least the music that you make is ugly and real.
Yeah.
And you say that you put things in your songs that everyone else is too afraid to say.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things you say that you think people are most afraid of saying themselves?
I think ego is one of the big things. I think a lot of artists have delusions of grandeur and ego, and they think really highly of themselves, but for some reason they feel like it's not socially acceptable to be very public about that the level of ego they have, and so they pretend that they're humble. I just don't bother with that. I'm just extremely honest. That's it.
I mean, I don't know. You use this phrase delusions of grandeur, and I wonder, like, do you really feel like your dreams are delusions of grandeur, or do you feel like that you frame it that way because of maybe how society is?
This is still a question that I struggle to answer every single day, actually.
Yeah.
I don't really know if my dreams are delusional. What I do know is that sometimes I experience these kind of waves of like feeling better than everyone else, and I'm like, wow, I'm amazing. And I'm aware that like that is sometimes a symptom of narcissistic personality disorder or symptoms of like bipolar disorder. I haven't been diagnosed with any of these things, but sometimes I get these like waves of like, oh wow, I'm doing really well and I think I'm going to take over the world. And then other days I will feel really bad about myself and be like, you know, I am feeling really bad and feel like I don't think I'll go anywhere. So I kind of go between those two states.
You have your highs and your lows. Don't you think that a lot of people, that almost is the human condition, I think, sometimes?
Yeah, totally. But I think it's more pronounced in artists. Absolutely. And that is like kind of why I wrote the song Artist Anthem, because it's something that I see in a lot of my artist friends. I write a lot of songs that are based on the experience of an artist. And so you can kind of say that I'm a rapper's rapper, or I am an artist's artist, which is one of the reasons I named myself the Lexicon Artist.
Yeah. I wonder though, like, it must be interesting having those extremes, because like he said, we all have them, but it's like it's really fascinating to like, I'm the king of the world. Wait, actually no, I'm the worst.
Yeah,
but I'm the king of the world, and but then I'm actually the worst, and sometimes bouncing back and forth between that multiple times in a day, and you really do explore that in some of your songs.
Absolutely.
Before we get to that though, did you grow up in Taiwan?
I did grow up in Taiwan.
Do you feel like that experience, like the culture shift from growing up in Taiwan and now you live in Oakland, helped you to maybe recognize these things inside yourself, or maybe even reinforce those things?
Oh, absolutely.
How so? Because this is not like an outline question. I'm actually legitimately curious, because life is much different there than it is here.
And I can actually use this as a framing to better answer your earlier question, which is, what are these like things that are uncomfortable for society that I'm writing about?
Yeah.
Every time I go back to Taiwan, I feel like it feels more foreign to me every single time I go back, because I spend so much time here in the U.S. Like, I live in California, Oakland, Bay Area, but I also have visited many different places in the U.S. And I think one of the main things that is emphasized here in the U.S. as opposed to in Asia is this idea of individualism. And this is like a common thing that comes up in psychology and, social psychology classes. I was a psych major. It is like one of my songs.
At UC Berkeley, you're not saying it, I am.
Yep. And one of the things that comes up is individualism versus collectivism. So in East Asia, Taiwan, China, Japan, Korea, like collectivism is big. And what I mean by collectivism is people feel like they need to all be the same, and they need to not deviate from looking normal, sounding normal, and acting normal. And it is more important to be part of the group than to like have your own individual quirks. And so my experience growing up in that kind of culture and having interests that were different from other people, liking music that was different, having hobbies that were different. People around me didn't really seem like people that I could relate to as much, just because they were much more collectivist. And I feel that every single time I go back home, and whenever I come back here, I feel like I'm able to express my individualism a lot more.
It's like you're living in the world at large in a manic state, going from one swing to another. It feels like you're going from collective to individual, from collective to individual. What does that do to the psyche?
Whoa, we're getting really deep here. It honestly is a big shift, and I really experienced it when I went home last year. I go home about every year. It used to be about twice every year.
Are your parents still there?
Yeah, my parents are still there. They have we have like a family home there, and most of my family is still there. I do have one brother who lives on the East Coast, but I don't have any family in California. I'm actually here just because I went to school here, and I ended up continuing to live here. So yeah, my family still lives in Taiwan, and every time I go back to visit, I noticed just like messaging, media, advertisements everywhere. It encourages people to look a certain way and act a certain way. And it's really hard to explain just by telling you. You really have to experience it for yourself by visiting places like Tokyo or Taipei or Seoul. And you can really see how people want to achieve a certain norm. As opposed to in the US, a lot of people are, looking to make something of themselves and, caring a lot about something that they can make out of themselves and like being an individual. Do you know what I mean? Yes. I want to be a star, or I want to be a basketball player.
Well, there goes the raging ego.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, well, and that is exactly. That's individual. Ego is individual at its height, I think.
Exactly. And so the contrast moving between those, I think, is even though Taiwan is the place I grew up, it feels less like a place where I can express myself every year.
So how would Raging Ego go over in Taiwan? Are you do you bring your music home with you?
I haven't yet. I've never performed live. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to kind of add on to that question, what does your family think of this project? And are they able to fully appreciate the messaging of the songs?
That's such a hard question. I have the answer for it, but it's hard. And I think I can tell you that they are very supportive of whatever I want to do. The stereotype of the Asian tiger parents that force you to do stuff that you don't want to do, right? Are you familiar with that stereotype?
I mean, you can explain it to those who aren't, but
sure,
yeah.
I can. So like there's like Asian tiger moms or Asian tiger dads or whatever. It's like a common kind of trope in media where we're talking about Asian people, where it's like, why aren't you a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer? Like they have really, really strict, rigid standards for what they want their children to be, and they force their kids to do exactly what they want them to do. I will not say that my parents are like that at all. My parents have been very flex, very okay with letting me do pretty much whatever I wanted to do, as long as I was happy, as long as I enjoyed what I was doing, and they've always been extremely supportive, so I'm very happy for that. However, I will clarify that my parents speak English very well, but I do rap very fast, and I do use a lot of big words because I'm the lexicon artist.
You are the lexicon artist.
And so I will say that I am not sure. I won't say completely not, but I am not sure if they have fully understood or grasped kind of the deeper nuances that I put into my music. And I'm not really sure if they ever will, just because there is a little bit of a cultural barrier. But again, I'm speaking for them, and it's very likely that they maybe can understand. But I've always grown up in this experience of feeling like my parents never really understood me, and I've matured since then, and I realized that they understand me a lot better than I think they do. Yeah. So chances are they probably understand my music more, but sometimes a lot of the time I feel the need to explain how I'm being successful. Like, look, I put out an album. Look, I'm going on tour. Look, I'm at South by Southwest, and like sometimes I worry that they aren't able to appreciate like how big these steps are, and that makes me very anxious because I want to make them proud. I truly do. I really, really want them to be proud of me, and I want them to love what I do and to love what I love doing.
Have they seen you perform?
No, they haven't
Not at all.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll send them the link from tonight. I wonder what they think of you essentially kind of refuting the place that you grew up and the society that you lived in, because that didn't fit. You didn't feel right in a collectivist society.
The thing about that is I don't refute Taiwanese culture. There are a lot of things about Taiwanese and Asian culture.
For you though is what I mean. I don't mean that you're like.
Are you talking about the individualism?
I'm talking about you basically grew up in this culture, and
right.
that was not for you. It's not you like making a political statement about Taiwan or anything like that. It's just basically you grew up there, you felt out of place,
yeah.
and now your songs are kind of anti-collectivist, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a refutation of an aspect of that culture. So
True.
I was just curious if you thought they had any thoughts on that.
I don't know if they do or if they don't. What I do know is that my mom texted me a photo from like, years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago of me as a kid. And she said, in this photo, it doesn't look like you have a raging ego. So I remember that. And so I think she doesn't really believe that I have a raging ego. And
but she knows you're a tantrum thrower.
Yeah. She knows that. And she knows that like we didn't used to get along very well when I was younger. But as I grew up, I started to understand, what my parents really wanted for me. And I guess to answer your question, I think my parents may not fully understand, I guess, I don't, maybe not fully understand, but like, sometimes I feel like, how do I put this? I have an aspect of my personality that maybe they haven't come to terms with, or maybe they always see me as, their little girl, so they haven't, come to terms with the fact or admitted the fact that I also have these parts to my personality. I don't think that they feel like I'm refuting Taiwanese culture because I'm only refuting that part of it.
Yeah, and that's,
there are other
just
parts
to be clear,
of it.
that's
yeah,
what I meant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are other parts of it that I like value a lot, like, the importance of family, like, filial piety, feeling like responsibility towards yourself and others, like, and even parts of collectivism, like, feeling responsible towards your community. Like, I truly like value that, and I feel like I wouldn't have turn out to be, I think, a well-rounded person if I didn't grow up in a culture that valued that and like valued respecting your elders, things like that. So those parts I don't refute. It's only that part where I feel like everyone's trying to be the same that I refute.
Do you feel like this project has caused any of these negative things, any of these supposedly negative things in you to change? Or do you feel like you address them, you talk about them, and they just remain?
I feel like I've become a lot more honest with my emotions since I've started doing this. And I had a lot of trouble being honest with what I felt and what I wanted before I started rapping and before I started writing my own original songs. That is also a part of Asian culture where we're not really encouraged to express our emotions. And so I grew up being pretty emotionally repressed and not really knowing how to express them to others, like express them to like boys I liked or like my friends, or like really value or really acknowledge my own value and really prioritize the way I felt. And I wrote a song called The L Word. I wrote
just gonna ask you about that song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I wrote a song about that. I was like, I'm not good at expressing emotions, but then I had this experience and now I'm like better at doing this.
We can skip ahead to talk about that song because there's kind of a chronological thing I want to do with the album. But let's jump to the L Word. I have an even harder ball question for you. It's even harder than the original Hard. Are you ready?
Here we go.
All right. So you talk about and reference how you don't like to say the word love.
Yeah.
It seems like you've moved past that.
I have moved past that.
What do you think it was about that word that you didn't like to say?
I thought it was cheesy, probably. And I thought it was overused. I thought it was trite. And it just has such a weighted, loaded meaning to it. And like it still does now, but I think I'm more comfortable with weighted, loaded information. And I feel this is probably the real answer. I did not like being vulnerable, and being an artist and being such an honest artist and putting so much of myself on stage has forced me to be vulnerable with large amounts of people all the time. And that is actually also what Curse of Creativity, which is the song that follows the L Word, is about, is like being vulnerable with people who you don't know. And that's pretty much forced me to be that way with the people who are closest to me. I'm like, if I can be so vulnerable with like people in the audience, why can't I tell that to like people I love? You know, I really should be able to do that.
So you feel
that's more dangerous.
You think so?
Oh yes. You know, one thing struck me as I was reading some of the essays you'd sent over. The words from your mother stick with you, because you keep bringing them up. Same with me. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a connection that we have there. I think your mother is very intuitive. I have a feeling, especially about her children. And she would hit you with certain things and certain information that you would like to not believe, but you know that she's nailing it.
True.
And one of the things my mother left me, and it's always stuck with me, is, Tom, whenever you write a note to any of your girlfriends, never use the L word in print.
So, I mean, do you feel then like you're less self-repressed than you used to be? Because, I mean, not being able to tell someone you love them, especially if you have feelings for them, I mean, talk about repression.
Yeah.
So you feel like this project has maybe made you be less repressed?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because now there's an outlet for it, right? There didn't used to be an outlet for it.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to express any of the stuff, and I didn't think it was appropriate to express a lot of the stuff. And now I have the ability to talk about it, and in a way that actually is very cathartic, because I have a lot of energy on stage, and I, put my body into it. I jump around, I run around, I like yell at people. And so that part of it is cathartic too. It's physical catharsis plus mental catharsis. So I feel like just by that, I've become a lot more expressive and also more comfortable with vulnerability than I ever used to be. One of the reasons I never told people I loved them was also a cultural difference. This is really interesting. In East Asia, there's this thing called confession. In Japanese, it's called kokuhaku. And basically, it's this concept that if you have a crush on someone, you need to tell them how you feel, like confess your feelings, and then you need to start going out exclusively. Like there isn't like, it isn't even like, oh, I'll ask you on a date, and if it doesn't go well after 3 dates, then like it's okay. It's like you put your entire heart on the line for someone else, and they take it or leave it. And like if they leave it, that is a rejection of your person. So I was so scared to like, tell people feelings. It's really serious in Asia, whereas in here you can just kind of ask people out on a date, and if it doesn't work out, and then it's not a big deal. It's not like a rejection of your person, and I've gotten a lot more comfortable with that, just like in my personal life as well.
In 2018 you released an album documenting some of this despair, called Raging Ego.
Yep.
And you've described your own ego as being raging. Is there anything more to say about your ego? Because like your ego is like the thesis statement of this album. Your ego, like basically this album is however many tracks it is. And it's like the ego is like the, it's like the main highway. And each song we're like getting off on this exit of the ego, and then we're going to get off on this, so you kind of address like how it affects you, the artist. You address how it affects you, the lover. You address how it affects you, the child. Yeah. It's a fascinating piece in that way. So is there anything to say just broadly about your ego and time you've spent with it? I'm
super impressed because like very few people have picked up on the nuances of that. Like I'm really impressed at myself for having been able to like craft it into a kind of cohesive project. But like that is the goal that I wanted this project to be, is even though they're all about different things, the thesis statement is like the one thing that ties it together. It's about how my ego affects personal relationships, my career, childhood. In the song Artist Anthem, which I believe you played tonight. I did. You return to the line, "Oh, I need professional help. I'm an artist and I hate myself." Yeah. Do you feel like that still applies in this modern day for you? The origin of this song is something that someone I was seeing at the time said to me. Like he told me that he could tell that I hated myself in some ways. And I was like, I think that sounds like a really good chorus.
Did you like it when he told you that?
I think it was a moment of honesty.
Yeah.
It was a moment that made me realize that, yeah, I do hate myself in some ways, but again, I can spin it into a positive and fun thing.
Even if it's true, we tend to not like to hear something like that. I wish I had recording of that conversation. It's like telling somebody that you purportedly love, being like, yeah, I think you kind of hate yourself. I mean, I can't imagine that the first time you heard that was a great thing to hear, but it did make a song, and so there we have it.
It made one of the songs that I think has like the longest legs.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like people really like it. They love yelling along to it, and they really, really relate to it, because I think another part of I am an artist and I hate myself is you can hate your work a lot, even if when you're making it, it's great, or when you perform it one time, you think it's great. Another time, you can look at your video and be like, like, why do I sound like that? So you can go back and forth between liking your own work and hating your own work very quickly as an artist. And I think a lot of artists, whether you're a visual artist or musical artist, theater artist, film artist, you can relate to that a lot. And I think a lot of people have that love-hate relationship with their own work and also with themselves, but tied to their work, which is why I say I'm an artist and I hate myself.
I just have, one other question about the song.
Sure.
We don't have to include it.
You can ask it.
But,
I'm really enjoying this.
You explore a connection in this song about being an artist and enjoying rough sex.
I somehow knew that was the question that you were going to ask.
And it jumps out.
Yeah. I actually think, so to clarify, the connection is not between being an artist and liking rough sex.
Yeah.
It's between hating yourself and having rough sex.
Yes. But also, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C.
What is that called?
That's a transitive property, my friend.
Transitive property.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, but are we there with this?
We absolutely are, because if I'm an artist and I hate myself, and I hate myself,
therefore you hate yourself,
and I enjoy rough sex,
therefore
then I'm an artist and I like rough sex.
Yeah, but like correlation is not causation,
No, but in this case,
right.
I think it is.
Yeah, but okay, yeah.
But you tell me.
Obviously, there is a higher percentage of people in the BDSM community who are also involved in artistic pursuits. But I don't know. Again, correlation does not equal causation. I don't know if it's just a correlation or if they are artistic. Therefore, that means that they're artistic means they're more likely to be open-minded. And it also means that they're more likely to be open-minded about sex.
Yeah.
And experiment.
Yeah. Openness to new experiences. Are you familiar with Ocean at all? The Big Five?
No, tell us all about it.
Okay, so it's the most reliable retest psychological personality assessment. So it's 5 letters. Ocean. O is openness to experience. C is conscientiousness. E is extroversion. A is agreeableness, and N is neuroticism. So everyone is analyzed on each of these parameters, so to speak. And you can be like high in openness and low in neuroticism. So that means like, you like to explore a lot of things and you're also not plagued by anxiety. Or you can have like both be high and like, just different levels of each of the different parameters. And that determines like, how likely you are to pursue certain hobbies or certain careers and things like that. So it is a psychologically proven test as opposed to the Myers-Briggs, which is also something that I enjoy doing. But if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, like it's 4 letters. It's again, it's God. I think this is too much to go into.
No, it's not, because I have a follow-up question.
I want to hear the 4 letters. Yeah.
Okay, so it's there's 16 total personality types, as opposed to just like the 5 different parameters in Ocean. So the Myers-Briggs MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, is a psychological examination that hasn't been proven to be retest consistent, but it is commonly used to determine what kinds of careers you should pursue. And so each of these parameters has 2 different sides. So the first parameter is E versus I. So extroversion versus intuition. Extroversion versus introversion. So are you extroverted or introverted? Do you get energy from people or do you lose energy from people?
I think that's an important definition. I feel like they should teach that in like basic classes because people have different definitions of those two words. But that's a very interesting summed up way. But please continue.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I agree with you in that some people think it's like, oh, are you outgoing? Not necessarily. Like I can be outgoing, but I can be drained by people. So I will say I'm slightly more extroverted than introverted, but it really is about whether you get energy from people or you lose energy from people.
So let's go through all the Myers-Briggs stuff, and then I've got some questions for you.
Sure. Yeah. Let me just burn through it really quick.
Yeah.
Then it's N versus S. So intuitive versus sensing. Intuitive versus sensing broadly is N is intuitive. It's big picture. Do you see the big picture, and do you like kind of think about? Do you see the big picture? Let's say big picture. S. Do you see the? Shit. Sorry. Let me start this over again. N is, do you see the big picture? And do you think about big concepts? S is, do you see the small details? So it's like forest versus trees. T versus F, easy, thinking or feeling. Is your primary mode of processing information through thoughts or through feelings? And P versus J, judging versus perceiving. Judging means you're very organized and you like to have a plan. P means you go with the flow and you're more spontaneous and you're more an improviser. So going by all of these, I am an ENTJ, which means I'm extroverted, intuitive, thinking, and judging. And that can tell you a lot about my personality. It's not accurate because it hasn't been scientifically proven, but a lot of businesses will tell you that it's a great way to analyze someone's personality. And personally, I think it's a good way to predict someone's personality as well.
What about on the ocean ranking? Do you remember your rankings on those?
I think I don't exactly remember, but I can kind of just tell based on what they mean. So ocean, openness to experience, very high.
Well, I mean, look at the topic that got us here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
C, conscientiousness. I don't exactly remember what this means, but I think it pertains to how careful you are and how much you adhere to rules. And I think I'm slightly lower in that one.
Yeah.
E, extroversion, high.
Mm-hmm.
A, agreeableness. This is how like nice and like friendly and happy you seem to be. On the lower side, although I'm pretty happy, but I can get very irritable.
Absolutely.
Pretty easily.
Yeah,
And N, high. I'm very high. Neuroticism, I experience like depressive and anxious symptoms quite often. So yeah. Your follow-up question, go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious what your rankings were. I mean, yeah. And I mean, your high ranking on O suggests to me that the rough sex thing was more of an autobiographical observation. But
yeah, actually, to wrap this whole topic up, remember how I said that this song was inspired by someone I was seeing who told me that I hate myself?
Yeah.
He specifically said, yeah, you do this and you do this, and you also like rough sex, so therefore you must hate yourself. And this is not something that I've shared in any podcast. So it's true.
This
I
is
do
the
like it.
exclusive LEX the Lexicon Artist fan club only version.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the openness. The exclusive, actually. Thank you for the exclusive on that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, I think actually that provides better context because if he had just out of context said, I see that you hate yourself, it makes a lot less sense. But here he provided a well-reasoned argument and you agreed.
Yeah.
And then you wrote into a song.
And then I put it in a song.
A real banger.
Thank you.
And we can assume he limped away that night, or?
Well, it just depends. We don't need to go into the specifics of who. But that's very very progressive, Tom. You have a song called Luther on this album.
Sure.
And you've said that some of your friends heard this song and were disturbed by how angry and violent it was. And so I'm curious, how does that present itself in this song?
I don't know. I still don't know how to feel about this song, even though I wrote it and produced it. Yeah. Well, I didn't produce it. I wrote it, and then I had my friend who is local Bay Area based. His name is Wrong Sounds. He produced like an industrial style sound track for me. And I really like industrial music, so I really like how this song turned out.
But you're pissed off in this song.
I am pissed off in this song. I am pissed off at a former friend who thought that she knew what was best for me, but didn't. And I kind of channeled the rage of Lex Luthor into the song. And I was very angry at the time. And I was angry at her, and I was angry at being misunderstood. And I was angry at people being presumptuous over what they thought was best for me. And I was angry at people betraying me. So I put all that in the song.
Was she the only betrayer, or were there multiple betrayers?
I've been betrayed, and I have also been the betrayer.
Yeah.
She wasn't the only one who betrayed me. I also channeled a lot of betrayals in middle school.
Yeah.
During that time I transferred schools, I was part of a group of friends who I was trying to climb like the social ladder. I talk about a little bit about this in Mistakes, but I was trying to climb the social ladder, and I went from like this group to the other group. I betrayed this first group to go to the other group, and then they betrayed me.
It's Game of Thrones.
I know. So the rage was also directed at them, but I think it was just a weird little way of kind of combining this. Lex Luthor's plot to take over the world, and also Lex Luthor's perspective of like what he believes is right, which may not necessarily be right. Like, people see the side of Superman, right? Like, people are like, oh yeah, Superman's a cultural icon, he's the best, but like, what about Lex Luthor's side of the story? So that's what inspired me to write this song.
You mentioned something to me earlier, Tom Gaffey, about the middle school references.
Yeah.
And the psychology.
Well, all right. So here's the thing. I think you look back at it, it's almost the game of, God, I wish I'd said this as opposed to that. But at the same time, a couple things are happening in junior high. Although it was, I imagined it differently when I read your account of it. A lot of times when a kid doesn't want to get paired with someone, when a kid is trying to be a social climber in junior high, he's afraid not so much of having a bad time with you. He's afraid of being found out himself for being exactly that freak that he is accusing you of being. I can't be seen with this person. I can't have that connection made.
Yeah.
And because a lot of junior high boys in particular, well, and the girls as well, feel they maybe even are part of that crew, but they're holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle. It's allowing yourself to be an individual saved yourself some stress. But then it comes to, now here you are as the adult. You made the statement. I wish that kid would see me now. Who do you think? Which kid do you wish would see you now? You, the 7th grade girl, or him, the 7th grade boy? Oh,
wow. I wish both of them could see me. Some of my music, Luthor included, and also Peep Game, is kind of fueled by this desire to prove the haters wrong and to prove the people in my past who doubted me, to prove to them that I am successful now. But I wish that my younger child self could see like what she would someday become, because she was very down on herself, and she didn't believe that people liked her. She didn't think that, she had any friends, and she didn't think that people wanted to spend time with her out of anything other than pity. And now look at me. People do want to spend time with me, and I realize that a lot of people do and genuinely appreciate what I have to offer. And I don't think I would have been able to believe that 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, because you yourself were a hater, but in a different way.
I hated myself.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was kind of like what you were getting at.
Yeah, that is the point.
Absolutely.
I see so much self-loathing when I'm working with the kids down here at times.
Yeah.
And you just want to get to them and say, don't, man. Love yourself.
One of the last songs on this album is called Mistakes.
Sure.
Seems like this song, in the essay that you wrote about it that you sent to us, is like a request for those close to you to keep you in check.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
I actually wrote another song about that isn't on this album. It's called Narcissist.
Yeah.
And the song is about how if people keep saying nice things about me, but don't really mean it, if people keep saying, oh, I love your music, that was so good, great performance, blah, 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 but they don't tell me when I'm doing bad things, and they just keep enabling me, then I'm going to end up an actual narcissist. I'm actually going to self-sabotage myself. And I need people around me to tell me when I'm messing up.
Yeah. Because I guess you need to like force positivity sometimes when you're feeling down. You got to like lift yourself up. You know what I mean? But that has its trade-offs, because if you start to believe that you're great all the time, there are times when you're actually not being maybe morally great. So it's kind of a difficult thing. Being an artist is difficult because there are times when you wake up and maybe you don't want to go play a show, or you feel like, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
One of those things that I think any artist could identify with.
It's more common with people who are bilingual or more.
Really?
Oddly enough. I don't really know how this works, but they've done a study that shows that if you use, like, obviously being bilingual or trilingual or multilingual makes you activate different parts of your brain, and apparently the patterns of those activation are correlated to having higher levels of imposter syndrome. So people who are monolingual generally don't experience that as much, and I don't really know why this is, but I speak 2 languages natively, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, you want to talk about the universal experience of an artist. I think imposter syndrome is almost across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're actually a total narcissist. Truly, I mean, I think that it requires a level of inner propulsion to sometimes get through that. But you want to make sure you're being aware about being in check in other parts of your life. And it seems like that's what you're trying to channel in this.
Yeah,
song.
I don't know if I gave a good explanation of it.
No, you.
Did that kind of match up with how you would describe it, Jim?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I relate to that song less in how it comes in the song and more just from my own experience of trying to do new things. And, you wake up some mornings and you feel like, I don't know, should I even be doing this? But because, if you are driven enough and you have a desire to just get up and go and do things, you have to push yourself.
Yeah.
And, I find that there's a correlation for me between how nice and empathetic I am and how much I'm just fucking getting stuff done. And when I'm powering through and making major progress, sometimes on things that have taken a lot of time and energy to get to, I find when I'm just feeling like I am the fucking king, I feel like those are periods, if I'm being honest, where sometimes I'm less empathetic, when I have maybe less time for someone that would maybe need my time in a down moment. And that is where this song really touched me, because I think that there's overlap there. I need to be put in check in those moments. My stuff is not the most important thing in the world. Maybe I needed to be that way in order to make movement, but I got to learn how to downshift so that I can be where I need to be for all the relationships in my life.
That's pretty common, I think, with all of us.
Yeah.
That's down here.
At the Phoenix Theater. To all the nerdcore listeners out there.
The
the community center that Tom runs.
Luckily, because I am dealing with a lot of teenagers, they have a natural way of putting you in check. But I will tell most kids once they start becoming regulars here, look, here's the deal. I want to be here when you need me. So if it feels like I'm not paying attention, you can tell me, get out of yourself. I need to have you now. And that's what it takes sometimes. That's a visual check, or a check that you're allowing someone to take on you.
That is so good that you're offering that for people who probably need someone in a lot of points in their life and need someone to guide them. So it's really great that you're doing this.
I think down here we all need that.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, we have varying ages across the table here, but I feel like it's one of those things that you don't necessarily get better at, but you can develop better systems to be better at. I don't think you become natural, at least for me. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s. I don't feel like I'm naturally more inclined to shy away from this behavior, but I do feel like at least there are better controls that I can institute in my life. Like you just described, the ultimate control, which is hey, if I'm being an asshole and you need me,
if I don't see you, if I'm in my own world,
exactly, being an asshole was just me coloring it up, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, as you know, I do enjoy being an asshole.
Yeah, and sometimes to be a star, to do something that is very difficult, that requires 100% of your being, you need to be the asshole. I mean, your album is full of that.
Yeah.
Your album is full of cases where you were being an asshole for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Because you felt in that moment, whether it was for your music or whether it was for your personal development or whether it was for your development of, whatever, you behaved in a way that you look back on and you're like, wish I hadn't behaved in that way.
I don't actually come off very sympathetic in this album, do I?
Well, no, but that's not
you
the
come
point.
off as honest.
But that's
Thanks.
Yeah, that's-
I guess that brings us back even to the beginning of this conversation, which is like, what are the parts of me that I can't share in my normal life that I bring to the project? And it's like, it's moments where I like felt like I needed to be the asshole, or I wanted to be the asshole, but it was the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And like to hide from that or to deny that I did it would be a disservice, because I did it and it hurt people, and I acknowledge that I hurt people, but in the process of acknowledging it, I can maybe not make it better, but like at least make sure that I don't do that again.
Our lives are full of those things. I think to be paralyzed with self-loathing and regret is not necessarily the way to process those things. To just to stop doing things because you feel bad about stuff that you did before, I think does yourself a disservice. I think it's good to reconcile. It's good to be honest with yourself. And this album is you trying to do all those things. You're not like making excuses necessarily. You're saying, yeah, I did those things. I'm not proud of them, but I'm trying to be a better person.
Yeah.
And I can be a bit egotistical sometimes, but hey, guess what? To be a star, you got to have a little bit of ego.
Well, I think to
that's
be a
true.
human, you need to have some ego, though, don't you?
Well, you have to recognize your own value at the very least, and you need to not have people step on you, and you need to realize your own worth, and you need to establish your own worth so that other people can see your value. Because if you don't see your value and you don't deliver your value, then how can you expect anyone else to?
Yeah.
I think that's a really great way to wrap up discussion of the album. Do you have anything to say, Lex, before we wrap the whole thing up?
Honestly, this has been a super enlightening conversation for myself, and hopefully for both of you too. I hope you enjoyed
Absolutely.
just the whole process. I feel so much more prepared to do my little pilgrimage in Austin now, just because I had the chance to talk to both of you. And just to wrap things up, both of you really, really did your research, and I can tell that you read the essays. You were asked just such incisive questions. Really, what did you call them? Like hardballs?
Yeah.
There we go.
Some hard-hitting questions, some hardballs, absolutely.
And that made me really question myself, and I can't wait to listen back on it and see what new insights I can pull from it, because this was a intense psychoanalytical experience for hopefully all three of us. So thank you so much for creating a safe environment where we can talk about all this stuff, and I hope it was insightful for you too.
Gosh, thank you. Thank you for making the trip from Oakland on the eve of your trip to Austin. And, I've listened to your music a lot today, and I'm a big fan of it, and I'm looking forward to what you make in the future.
It's more fun to see live, too, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. And that's such a great lead-in, Tom, to the last thing that I have to say, which is, and now, a performance by Lex the Lexicon Artist. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Please direct your attention to my performance. A trainer line of vision on me like the eye of Horus, and you shall find the metaphorical dogs enormous. Of course, do you believe that you're not afforded your due respect, or treated with the heart of decorum that you expect? Maybe you're doing your best but feel neglected. In a sea of perfection, it's easy to feel defective. Well, I got an answer that will help you with your deep shame. Confront your enemies by telling them to Peep Game. See, they've been sleeping on your flames, you've been deep fame, but I swear the recognition's there for you to reclaim. And as a kid, people said I was strange, but now that I'm older, I'm proud I'm an artist with range. And though it's true other people's minds are the hardest to change, I use all my power to keep peeping hard in my game. So if you're doing something different and they call you a freak because you're making people listen when you're rocking a beat, say Peep Game, Peep Game, Peep Game, Peep Game, Peep Game. And if you always bring the fire but they're never impressed because their shit is uninspired and they know you're the best, say Peep Game, Peep Game, Peep Game, Peep Game. Man, I got so much game, you couldn't peep it all in one day. Peeping from the weekend all the way to Monday. My game is colorful, blue, pink, and yellow. Treat me like it's Easter and give me them peeps marshmallows. Maybe you can bring your peeps to the show, cause I got so much game to peep and I want people to know. I just bring the heat and they eat it up like pizza to go. In a minute I'm drowning in it, I'll be deep in the dough. Let's go. My game is exhibitionist, peep it like your time. My game is like my laptop, peep it like my mom. My game is different in the field full of sheep. Step up to the stage and give it a little bo peep. Yeah, I'm like the Lex to your brainiac. You look a little green in the face of megalomaniac, staring in the box like my game's a peep show. I'm working out the status of my raging ego. So if you're doing something different and they call you a freak because you're making people listen when you're rocking a beat, say peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game. And if you always bring the fire but they're never impressed because their shit is uninspired and they know you're the best, say peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game. Thank you. I used to write in diaries, and then I started writing music. Now my life is recorded in its entirety. Tiny wires etched with sonic ink that never fades, constantly depending on my hard drive to never break. Think it's strange, when we were kids our journals were secret. Harry Potter notepads and handmade locks to keep them safe. Now I'm advertising my past like I'm passing leaflets out to random strangers, asking them to watch me be a freak on stage. And that's the magic and the curse of creativity. You get to treat your demons, but you need to do it visibly, weaving all your misery with deep poetic imagery and woefully bare your soul. The limit is your dignity. Let them into private worlds with something so public. Open my veins with every song promoted and published. Take all the things that make me sick to my stomach and shove it into the crowd in hopes that somebody will love it. And maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap for a chance to attract you. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap just to have you. I remember when I first saw you play, and your electrifying stage presence took my breath away. Your music spoke to me more than my words could ever say. Ever since then I've been thinking about you every day. I started looking into your discography to get a glimpse into your thoughts and ideology. Thoughtfully articulated, raw and brutal honesty. I felt like I was reading your autobiography. With every track I was exploring your brain, inhabiting your every pleasure and absorbing your pain. I know that all your other listeners have felt like this too, but I'm privileged to have shared something special with you. And it's because you cut your veins and all of the above. Sounds insane, but I think I'm musically in love. And you should know that I don't like that word, which I mentioned in the song that you might have heard. And maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap for a chance to attract you. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap just to have you. What do you do when your most secret intent is also the thing you share to your social media friends? What do you do when your confessional medium's the subject of public scrutiny cause everyone's seeing it? Could I learn to live with it the way you do and all the other ones who may have paved the way for you? I know you well enough to say that this was made for you. No bravado, no pretense, just the naked truth for you. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap for a chance to attract you. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap just to have you. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap for a chance to attract you. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's who I dedicate this track to. Maybe that's you. Don't mean to distract you, but I would rack on my brains in the rap just to have you. Aw yeah, I am an artist, I am free. I am an artist, it's all about me. I write my own songs and I'm doing it well. I am an artist. myself. I wake up in the morning and I wish I was dead. It's taking all my motivation just to get out of bed. I'm so high, living like $1 million in debt. You don't become an artist till you're effed in the head. Don't believe me when I say I'm fine. I live in tragedy all the time, and it's easy when I don't know why I put my sanity on the line. And all my empathy has all but died. I can't remember how to cry, but you see me when I'm on the mic, just know I'm bleeding deep inside. And I said, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. I said, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. I said, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. I said, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. I'm an artist, I am unique. I say I'm normal, but I'm really a freak. Hi, it's very nice to meet you. Call me LEX. I like good music and I love rough sex. I'm emotionally repressed with an avoidant attack. An antisocially depressive and avoidant compaction is proportionally expressing the annoying attraction I have for sadomasochistic boys in the set. Don't believe me when I say I'm fine. I live in tragedy all the time, and it's easy when I don't know why I put my sanity on the line. All my empathy has all but died. I can't remember how to cry, but you see me when I'm on the mic, just know I'm bleeding deep inside. And I say, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. I said, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. I said, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. I said, I need professional help. I am an artist and I hate myself. Oh, we thought of offing ourselves. We made our art but put our lives on the shelf. It's like, yo, see, all I wanted was fame, but maybe fame and misery are one and the same. Like, maybe I should just give up on the game. I should save myself the strain of ever going insane. I'm making the change, abstaining from pain and any danger. I could waste my brain and make the whole world safer. No believe